He pulled a dying wolf from the ice. But the price he'd pay was beyond imagination. The January wind whipped across the frozen river as Grigory Sobolev pressed forward, head bowed. The snow crunched dully beneath his boots, each step echoing in the winter stillness. He cursed himself for taking the shortcut through Medveji Log, a dangerous path even seasoned hunters avoided in winter. Then he stopped. Something dark jutted from the ice. A hole, a body, motionless. Grigory stepped closer, his eyes widening. It was a wolf, half submerged in the icy water, its front paws still trembling as they clung to the edge, its gray fur stiff with frost, its eyes nearly lifeless. Grigory's instincts screamed, "Run!" A wolf was not a dog, not a friend. He remembered the livestock torn apart in his village, the neighbors who had vowed to shoot every last one, and yet he knelt down, carefully. The ice cracked ominously. With a knife, he began chipping away at the crust encasing the animal. He felt no anger, only awe and pity. When he loosened the last piece of ice, he gripped the heavy creature beneath its front legs and pulled with all his strength. The wolf was barely breathing. Grigory shone his flashlight into its eye, a twitch, a reflex. "You're alive," he whispered in disbelief. Then, against all reason, he heaved the wet, trembling creature over his shoulders and trudged onward. 3 kilometers through snow, with a wolf on his back. "I'm insane," he muttered. "Completely insane." His 3 hunting dogs barked wildly as he reached the gate of his wooden cabin. The wolf's breathing was shallow, water dripping from its coat, soaking Grigory's clothes. He staggered inside, laid the animal down in front of the warm stove, and collapsed beside it. Steam rose as the snow melted from their bodies. The wolf didn't move. Grigory gently rubbed its paws with warm water, covered it with blankets, murmured words he didn't even understand. And in that moment, in that silence between man and beast, Grigory felt that something had begun. Something greater than fear, greater than the hunt. It was the beginning of a debt no one had asked for, but one that would have to be repaid. 2 weeks later, the front door creaked under the frosty wind as Grigory's 14-year-old son, Alexei, stepped inside, his cheeks flushed red from the cold. The boy had finally been granted his long winter break, a rare opportunity to visit his father out in the Taiga. But what he saw inside made him freeze in the doorway. A massive gray wolf lay curled up in front of the stove, its breathing calm, eyes half closed. "Dad, is that a real wolf?" Grigory simply nodded. "I pulled him from the ice. He was nearly dead." "And now he lives here?" "He lives, that's all." Torn between fascination and caution, Alexei stepped closer. The wolf lifted his head, looked at him, and didn't move. No growling, no snarling, just a gaze that spoke more than any words could. That same evening, something began, something that deeply moved Grigory. Alexei, the city boy who had never touched a wild animal before, knelt cautiously beside the wolf, whom he instantly named Gray, and gently placed a hand on his back. The wolf stayed still, as if he could sense that this boy was no hunter, but someone he could trust. Over the next few days, Alexei massaged Gray's paralyzed hind legs, talked to him like an old friend, and brought him food. And Gray, the wild, wounded wolf, began to eat, to blink, to live. Grigory watched silently as something grew between the two that is rare even among humans. Genuine trust. But with the light came the shadow. One evening, local ranger Bragan suddenly appeared at the door. He had heard rumors, a wolf being kept like a pet. That was illegal. "If he's healthy, he'll be shot," Bragan said coldly. Grigory stayed calm, but inside, something churned. "He's still weak, and not dangerous." "Not yet," Bragan replied, his gaze icy, "but he will be." When the ranger left, a heavy silence settled over the house. Gray lay alert in front of the stove, ears pricked. Alexei stroked his fur in silence. Grigory knew the days of peace were numbered. And this was no longer just about a wolf, but about everything they had built here together. The morning was silent, too silent. Alexei stood in the yard when Gray suddenly bristled, his fur standing on end, and let out a deep growl. Seconds later, they heard the rumble of an engine. Braggin. The ranger stormed through the underbrush, rifle drawn, determined to kill the wolf. Alexei stepped out, placing himself between the wolf and the man. He never hurt anyone. He saved me. Braggin hesitated. Then, consumed by rage but stripped of power, he turned and vanished into the woods. But they all knew this wasn't the end, only a delay. That evening, Grigory and Alexei sat silently by the stove. Gray lay between them, eyes closed but alert. Grigory rubbed his face, exhausted. "We have to let him go, Lesha, before Braggin comes back, before someone kills him." Alexei wanted to protest, but he saw in his father's eyes that it was true. They had to take Gray to the northern hills, where the wolf pack roamed. The farewell was inevitable. Later that night, they packed a backpack, pelts, and supplies. And when Gray rose and stood by Alexei's side, without hesitation, without fear, the boy understood. The wolf was ready to return, but their hearts were not. The path through the northern hills was steep and silent. Mist lay over the fir trees, the moss damp with dew. Grigory led the way, Alexei followed, Gray between them, alert, calm, as if he could feel his destination approaching. At the pass, where the wind whispered through the branches, the wolf suddenly stopped. His ears twitched. Then from the distance a long, drawn-out howl. Just one, then a second, a third, a whole chorus of voices, wild and clear. Gray lifted his muzzle, closed his eyes for a moment, then turned around. No hesitation, no glance back, until he stopped at Alexei's side and let out a soft whimper. Alexei knelt down, wrapped his arms around the wolf's strong neck, his face pressed into the coarse fur. "Go, Gray, and come back, just sometimes." Tears welled in his eyes, but he smiled. Grigory only nodded, quiet and proud. The wolf turned, trotted away, step by step, drawn toward the howls. At the ridge, he looked back one last time. Then he disappeared into the shadows of the wild, back into his realm, back to the pack, back to the taiga that had birthed him. Time passed. Alexei stayed with his father. He grew into a man, a hunter, a guardian of the forest, just like Grigory once was. And sometimes on especially cold winter nights, when the stove crackled and the frost outside silenced the world, they heard it. A deep, powerful howl from the hills. Unmistakable. Gray still there, still watching. Grigory would often place a hand on his son's shoulder and say softly, "He never really left us." And Alexei would nod. Because some friendships endure, beyond time, beyond distance, and even beyond the call of the wild. Sometimes we rescue an animal, but sometimes it's the animal who saves us. Gray wasn't just a wolf. He was a reminder that trust can grow in silence, that love can bloom between species, and that true loyalty doesn't need a leash. What part of this story touched you most? Share your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. If you believe in the power of wild friendships, give this video a like, subscribe for more stories that move your heart. Share this with someone who believes that animals are more than instinct. Because sometimes all it takes is a single moment, a single gaze, to know